Hey guys, my name's Alana. I'm a Canadian, but I live here in the UK, and I just passed my Life in the UK test, and I'm here to tell you everything. Now, I'm going to tell you absolutely everything, and maybe you don't need all that information, so there's going to be chapters in this video. You can jump around depending on what information you need, but I'm going to tell you how I studied, what questions I got on my actual test, everything. So let's dive right into it. What is the Life in the UK test? So this is part of only certain types of visas, and largely it's when you are getting like permanent residency in the UK. So this test is not required for visas like a spouse visa, a student visa, getting sponsored through a British company. Like those are all separate visa situations, visa pathways. The Life in the UK test is largely for visas like indefinite leave to remain, which is what I'm in the process of doing right now. Hot tip alert, you have to pass the Life in the UK test before you can apply for indefinite leave to remain. However, something I didn't know originally, the Life in the UK test certificate does not expire. So you do not need to do the test like the week before you want to apply for indefinite leave. You could do it much earlier in the year, so you're not leaving it last second, but you do have to pass and get like a pass certificate code before you can apply for indefinite leave to remain. Make sense? Hope so. The next big question is, when should I book my test? Now, I saw online some people were like, oh, only book it like after you've studied for it, like when you feel ready to take the test. And other people are like, oh, you have to wait like 6 months before you can get a test, so you need to book it like way in advance. My advice, you can make a free account through the Life in the UK test website. It has its own sort of like government website. Make a free account, sign in, and look at your local availability. If you see that the testing center that you want to go to has loads of options, then you know you don't have to book 6 months in advance. You can just kind of keep an eye on it as you go along. Or you might look and see like, wow, I need to book something now because the testing center you want to go to is really busy. But you won't know until you check. So for me, I went to PSI Stratford. It's about a 15-minute walk from Stratford International. When I checked the website on the 17th of July, it was full up, fully booked until around the last week of August going into September. And then from that point, like September onwards, there was loads of availability. So I ended up booking September 4th. So that was sort of the 17th of July until the 4th of September. I found that was a good enough time for me to study. I started studying once I booked it, and I felt like there was enough time that I didn't have to cram the testing material, but it also wasn't too long that it was like there's no sense of urgency, and I just kind of like left it, if that makes sense. But I did book my test then in there. I wanted to apply for indefinite leave sort of end of October, so I thought if I did my test early September, it would give me a little bit of wiggle room. Next up, how do you actually book the Life in the UK test? Good question. So in the video description, I'm gonna put a link. There is an actual Life in the UK test booking website. Link in the description. The first time you visit the website, you are gonna have to register for an account. So it asks you things like you'll verify your identity, your name, your birthday, your address, that kind of stuff. It's likely that you have a e-visa. So say you're on a spouse visa, you're now moving to indefinite leave to remain, but you gotta do this test in between. So you can use your e-visa to generate a share code and then use that as like verifying your identity. So in the past in the UK, we used to use our biometrics residence permit, the BRP card, but since those are no longer valid, they're all sort of phased out, we now use the e-visa, and you have to generate a share code to then share that visa information with the testing center. It sounds really kind of confusing when you say it out loud, but if you just take your time and follow the prompts, it's pretty simple. How much does it cost? So currently the Life in the UK test is £50, and I absolutely would not be shocked if that is increased in the very near future. And if you fail, you have to wait at least 7 days before you can rebook it. You go through the whole process again, and you do have to pay the £50 again. But I have some tips in this video that I honestly think you'll pass it on your first try. Knock on wood. Now, one of the real uncertainties in this whole process is, what do you actually study? So you absolutely have to get the Life in the UK test handbook. You have to read this. It's not very big, but you gotta read it because literally all of the test questions come from this book. And if you feel up to it, you might even wanna read it twice. It's tough though, because while it's very short, it is shockingly brief. It's basically just a book of memorization. So it gives you very little context for certain things. Like it'll give you a name and it's like name, date of birth, when they died. He was a famous English painter who specialized in landscape painting. That's it. You gotta memorize that because that could be one of your questions. Or it talks about World War II, obviously, a big part of modern British history. I wanna say the entirety of World War II is one page. So you're not learning the context of any of these things. You are learning like names, dates, just the briefest of information, and that's it. Now there are online practice exams, and actually part of this like official handbook, right at the beginning, it says you can register your book to get a free subscription to online tests. There's like a little QR code that you can follow. I tried to do that and the website was so old and mismanaged. It no longer had a security certificate. So you get one of those messages like, are you sure you want to go to this website? It could steal your personal information, which obviously is so grim. So my partner and I actually made our own online practice exam, Brit IQ, and I love it. And this is what I used to help pass my exam. We built it entirely with this process in mind. I thought all of the online practice exams really sucked. Some of them were crazy outdated, some of them were broken and just simply didn't work. Even the official Life in the UK test app, there is a paid app, which I did get. There's no like system of memorization, it's just flashcards. And it doesn't help you track like the ones that you struggle with or the areas that you should be practicing more. It's just like, here's flashcards and do whatever. So we made britiq.co.uk. You can register for free and you get access to the first bunch of practice flashcards. If you want to get access to every single question, you can subscribe. I am genuinely so proud of this website. Like, we built it in a way that actually solidifies flashcard memorization. It tracks your proficiency in the different areas. Also, it looks gorgeous. Can I say that? And I found it really helpful because essentially Brit IQ immediately was like, Alana, you suck with the kings and queens. And I said, yeah, that sounds about right. So it's able to give me personalized help and gave me the flashcards that it knew I struggled with the most, rather than just repeatedly sending me the easy ones like I was finding with the official app. So I used Brit IQ and I passed my test on the first time. I hope it can help you. If you're not interested, honestly, no worries. It's something that we made because I just hated all of the online practice exams. So that's britiq.co.uk, link in the description if you want to check it out. That is me and my partner. It's something that we created, and I love it. Next up, it's what everybody fears, taking the test. What actually happens on the day of your Life in the UK test? So I went to PSI Stratford. I arrived about 30 minutes early and I was allowed to enter at that time. It might be different for different centers, but for this particular like testing center, they were letting people in about 30 minutes early. So there's a front desk. I checked in with him. He had a printed off list of everybody who was taking the test that day and had to verify that you were on that list. Then I was let into the building, took the elevator up. There's loads of signs. There's a lot of people. It's a real operation, if you know what I mean. So I find the door to the actual like testing center as part of this sort of like office building. And there's another person there to verify that yes, I am on the list and I am taking the test that day. They also make you turn off your cell phone and they watch you turn your phone off. And in that moment, I couldn't remember how to turn my phone off. I just never do it. So after you embarrass yourself in front of the people because you can't remember how to turn your phone off, you're then directed to some lockers and you have to put absolutely everything in the lockers. They're not huge, so if you are taking a giant winter coat, you've been warned, you're gonna have to shove that thing in. After the lockers, they gave me a laminated sheet of paper that had like double-sided, all of the rules and like what was gonna happen that day. And they sent me to sit down in sort of like this waiting area. So you sit there and read the rules. It's all pretty basic. Hand that back. And then it was time to get my identity verified. So this happened in like a separate sort of small office. And it's basically what you'd expect when verifying your identity. So they asked my name, my date of birth, my citizenship, why I'm taking the test, which I thought was interesting. Of course, that's part of my indefinite leave to remain application. Then she took my photo. I can only imagine what that looked like. Because I booked my appointment with my e-visa, she then pulled up that information and verified who was sitting in front of her looks the same as the photo on your e-visa online. I did hear some people there booked their test with their passport, in which case you have to bring your passport. But because I did it through the e-visa, all of that is online. I didn't need anything. I did bring my passport because I was so paranoid, but I didn't need it. So after she verified my identity, it was time to go through security, which was an experience. So it was this young girl. I mean, all of the people working there were just like young, sort of early 20s. I'd say kids, but like whatever, early 20s. She had one of those like metal detector wands. So she did that. She checked behind my ears. I had a t-shirt on, but the guy in front of me had a jumper. He had to pull up his sleeves so she could look at his forearms. I had long jeans on. I had to pull up my jeans so she could see my ankles and my socks. I had to put my hands in all of my pockets to show there's nothing in my jean pockets. And you know in your jeans, maybe you don't have it, but there's like the little coin pocket that is, I don't think anyone actually uses it. It's like just there. I had to pull that pocket like inside out to show that there's nothing in it. But after the testing, it was kind of like more detailed than airport security lately. After that was done, she was like, great, you're good to go. You can go into the actual like computer lab to do the test. So this was a small room. I'd say maybe like 15 computers, but not all of them were on. So there's one woman in there sort of organizing everything. She had me sit down at a computer. She asked me my name and date of birth. And then I thought this was crazy, but the photo that they took of me verifying my identity came up on the computer when she typed in my name and my date of birth, so they could verify that the person who got their identity verified is the same person taking the test. The security measures are just wild. And let me tell you, it wasn't a good photo. Anyway, I was given a sheet with instructions, like another laminated sheet, basically just how the testing center, like how the computer works, how the exam is going to work, how a multiple choice exam works, all that kind of stuff. If you have any familiarity with computers, like you will absolutely not need it. But of course, there are going to be people who take the test who maybe have never used a computer before. So they're trying to cover for all skill types. And because of this, you get 4 practice questions to start with, just to get you familiar with like selecting a multiple choice answer and then hitting next, which again, if you've used a computer before, is absolutely pointless, but maybe it's necessary for those who haven't. If those people exist, I'm assuming that they do. I wouldn't know that life. But afterwards, you get 24 real questions and you get 45 minutes in total. I would say I maybe took 5 to 8 minutes doing this test. When you think of like, I studied for 2 months, I've done all this prep work, getting into London, all the security, I was probably taking the test for maximum 8 minutes. So I read the question so slowly. I read all of the options. Then I read the question again. Then I selected my answer. So just really take your time. You will absolutely not need the 45 minutes. You either know the answer or you don't, right? And there's no like typing. You're not doing any sort of like essay questions. It's literally just multiple choice. So once I was done, put my hand up. I said to the woman like, hey, I'm done. I've finished. There's like a finish button. And she said, great, you can leave. So left the little computer room, went to the lockers, got my stuff. there was like that person at the door checking for people. And I said, is it all right if I go? Like, do I need to do anything else? And they said, no, you should get your results within 10 minutes. It'll come as an email to the email address that you used, obviously, to register. She said, good luck. And then I was out the door and that was it. By the time I got in the elevator, went downstairs, left the lobby, was kind of like walking across the street, turning my phone on. I wanted to call my partner. Within that time frame, I got my result. So she said within 10 minutes, it really was like 2. You also don't get your actual score. You just get a pass fail, which I would have liked to have known my actual score, but it doesn't matter. And in that email that tells you whether you passed or failed, you get like a Life in the UK code, this big long code. You then use that when you do your indefinite leave to remain visa application. There's a question about your Life in the UK test, and you plug in that code. Now, I knew I wanted to make this video, so when I left the testing center, I turned my phone on, I got my email that said I passed. Before I did anything else, I wrote down every question that I received on my test that I could remember. And I say this with the largest grain of salt. I don't think you're going to get the same 24 questions that I got, but I think it would be very perhaps enlightening to know what some of the test questions are. Annoyingly, I don't remember which of these are my 4 practice exam questions. They all kind of blurred together, but these are the questions that I got. I got at least one question about the flowers for the various countries. So you've got thistle, daffodil, rose, shamrock for the various countries, like which country has which flower. I got at least one of those questions. How old do you have to be to buy alcohol? This question wasn't worded what is a crown dependency, but it was basically like it kind of gave a definition and the answer was a crown dependency, so being able to describe what that is. What festival do Sikhs and Hindus celebrate in November? Who became Lord Protector? Who invented radar? Which media platforms have to give equal representation of political candidates? There's also 2 questions about women's right to vote, which I was very happy about because I actually memorized this one pretty easily. So when did women first get to the right to vote at the same age as men at 21? But also a separate question, women were given the right to vote after their work with which war? So 2 questions on women voting. One question that threw me, and I still don't really know what it was getting at, it was something like, which statement is correct? In Scotland, most minor crimes are dealt with at the Justice of the Peace. In Scotland, all criminal crimes are dealt with at the High Sheriff. There's 4 multiple choice. I couldn't remember the other 2, but it was something to do about like crime in Scotland. Pretty sure I got that one wrong. The nice thing though is you do not have to get a perfect score. I think you get 6 questions wrong. So as long as you do some reasonable studying, you should be fine. So even though I got that one wrong, I was still feeling all right. Another question, capital of Northern Ireland. Also, the patron saints for the different countries. So like the flowers, there was at least one question about like, which is the patron saint of Scotland, or Saint David is the patron saint of which country? What sport is Six Nations? Who wrote the Daffodils? What is expected of British citizens? So this is one of those questions where it's like, you're supposed to respect each other and take care of your local community. What monument is in Cornwall? Which emperor built the wall in the north of England to keep out the Picts? Which famous playwright was born in Stratford upon Avon? There was also a question about 2 famous para-athletes. And my final question, which I know I got wrong, who defeated the English at Bannock in 1314? I believe that is Robert the Bruce. In that moment, it just gone. Out of my head, disappeared. A couple of things that I was surprised about. There was nothing about the Battle of Hastings or the last successful invasion of England, which I feel like came up a lot in the textbook. Nothing about when certain days are. So when you read the book, there's a lot of like, when is Christmas Day? When is Boxing Day? When is Halloween? What is Halloween? I didn't get any of those, unfortunately. Nothing about MPs or like modern members of parliament kind of stuff. And there's actually very little about the kings and the queens and nothing about Henry VIII, which I was really surprised. What I wish I did differently. Honestly, nothing. Absolutely read the book. Maybe even read the book twice. Take your time with the book. Everything comes from the book. I also genuinely really liked using Brit IQ and building Brit IQ in the exact way that I wanted to learn. I found that really helpful and being able to study the sections that I struggled with the most. But also just give yourself time. You're not gonna wanna book your test a week out and give yourself a week to study. Like, I just don't think that's possible. Give yourself time, a good month, maybe 2. For me, I do not cram for tests. I do not cram for exams. Like, I just don't learn that way. So having the nearly 2 months was really nice. I could do bits in here, like, you know, bits and pieces. I could learn it and memorize it and kind of absorb it slowly, and I found that I retained it better. Maybe you're different, but I would just say, like, don't give yourself a week to study and then just go into it. It's easier than you think, but it's not that easy. My next step is to apply for indefinite leave to remain. So if you are interested in learning about how to do that, make sure to subscribe. That video is coming up soon. But if you have any questions about the Life in the UK test, definitely leave a comment down below. Not a professional, but I've been through it and I've come out the other side. And also, if you've done the Life in the UK test and somehow you're watching this video and you've made it to the end, please leave a comment down below about your personal experience. I think one of the things with this test is it feels kind of like shrouded in mystery. You don't really know what to expect. You don't really know what you're gonna be asked. And that adds like so much to the anxiety. So if you've done your test, or maybe you watch this video, go do your test, do come back, leave a comment about your experience so more people can get sort of like a rounded understanding of what it's really like. If you'd like to watch something else, definitely check out this one, everything you need to know about registering for a e-visa. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!